Well, hello, my friends. All right, so I'm back with another Blue review, broadcasting from New Year's Eve. I'm going to be uploading the prior installment shortly. But I thought I'd knock one out here. So this is going to be part one of two Blue reviews, and I'm going to discuss my favorite and least favorite first-time views of films in 2021. Okay, so here are the caveats. So I'm not doing any films that were actually released in 2021, that were 2021 releases. Okay, part two, next caveat. I'm culling this from my Letterboxd site list, where I do best first-time views of 2021 and worst first-time views of 2021, and I kind of update them as the years go by. The year goes by. And then I kind of whittle it down to of the year. In other words, my best of list raw for the whole year on Letterboxd, the film diary I keep there online, it has 49 films. So I have knocked it down to 30 films for the year that I saw for the first time in 2021, and there were not 2021 films. Then I also whittled down my worst first time views list from a raw list of, I think, 29 or 30, down to 29, I don't know. There's less of the worst and the best, thank goodness. Down to 15. So 15 worst of films that I saw for the first time in 2021 that were not 2021 releases. Okay, so we got all that straight. So first I'm doing this in two parts, the best and the worst. I'm going to go ahead and be the bearer of bad tidings / devil's advocate here and do the worst first. So, bear with me here. Still a little smashed. It is New Year's, but I don't care. So anyway, I want to talk about the films that I saw in 2021 for the first time, regardless of what year they came out, except new releases, that I thought were pretty execrable. So here's what my list says. Worst views of 2021 year's end. All first-time views, not including 2021 releases, in the order in which I suffered through them. And believe me, unless your taste is very different than mine, it probably is, you will suffer too if you watch these movies. These are the do not recommend list. Just for Henry Covert, this, your mileage may vary. YMMV, as the internet says, YMMV, your mileage may vary. So by my mileage, these movies are just rough going. Okay, so I'm not going to go into depth about any of them. I'm just going to kind of whiz through these. It's kind of going to be like AOC's 2021, the 21 great victories as a congressperson that I did. And she whiz through them, and most of them are minor non-accomplishments. This is for my political following peeps here, you others that have no clue what I'm talking about. But I'm going to do it in that fashion, but I'm going to do it slightly less melodramatically and drama queen-ish as AOC. I'm going to kind of try to, keep it real, so to speak. So here's the deal. This will probably enrage some and delight others. First one is, these are in the order I watched them. So early in the year, I watched this movie called Everly. I'm not going to go into super detail about any of these, but Everly was a 2014 film starring Salma Hayek, where she plays kind of this revenge-seeking hit woman, it's just terrible. It should have been great. It wasn't great. It was just hokey dialogue, poor direction. Let's move on. Okay, so the next movie came out in 2020. It was a recent release by Emerald Fennell called Promising Young Woman, starring this insanely overrated actress, Carey Mulligan. Personally, I despise this movie. This movie was a favorite on critics' lists all over the world. It was touted as a brilliant, first-time director, brilliant female star, brilliant genre movie. Some people call it a horror movie. Some people call it a drama. Some people call it a revenge, action. Some people call it a social parody, satire, what have you. I call it just crap. I thought her acting was hokey. She had this kind of hokey hussy, bronzed, blonde. It's kind of mildly southern with an attitude accent. She kind of reminded me of a cliche character you'd see in the 70s actor, kind of like, oh, what's her name? Not Mary Kay Place on Mary Hart and Mary Hart. She was actually cute and funny. The other chick, and she was okay too, the actress who played Polly Holiday, who played Flo on Alice, which of course was a TV remake of Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore, in which Flo was played by Diane Ladd. But this kind of like, I'm a hussy kind of guy, but at the same time, her character is ostensibly fronting that persona in order to lure these frat boy types into this horrible revenge, this kind of psychosexual tango on behalf of, I think, a friend of hers who was raped and killed. It's not really her personal tragedy exactly. As far as a rape revenge movie, I would only tenuously call it that. I think it did try to piggyback on the rape revenge genre, and I think it also tried to definitely take advantage of kind of the woke feminism era, and I'm not dissing that. It's just the way it was done, I thought was very by the numbers, predictable. I don't think it added anything to that particular discourse or conversation. I think you could get more out of a typical slugfest on a Facebook political group than this movie. Like I said, I thought her character was trite. I thought it was very predictable. It wasn't anything I hadn't seen before. The movie tonally was kind of all over the map. It didn't have a strong thrust. The only interesting thing about it is that her character, before the vengeance is exacted, does die. Which I was glad, not because the vengeance wasn't exacted, because the guys were scumbags. The one was kind of an ambiguous scumbag, and that's kind of audience manipulation, like the nice guy who actually might prove to her that not all these kind of guys are scumbags. And then he kind of outs himself as a scumbag, or does he? But she takes the revenge anyway. So that layer of ambiguity I thought was okay. It was a little better than most of the movie. And then the fact she dies, when I say it was welcome, it was because I was sick of the character. I was sick of the actress. I didn't feel like I didn't feel like the character was written well enough. I didn't feel like the actress had the gravitas or the charisma to push it through. I really hated this movie. And I was glad at the end, after her death, which I think was, like I said, was a ballsy move, that revenge was exacted. And some of the points were clarified. And you see that some of the revenge was warranted. Maybe all of it, But I don't put it up there with like a modern film done by younger women who reflects this kind of sensibility, as I would Talia Lugacy's Descent, which I've talked about on this channel before in my Bully review. I think Descent is a far better movie, less manipulative, less cornball. I don't know. I related to it more, maybe because it came out in 2007. Maybe it's a different generation, a different attitude. I'm not sure. I can't say it's because it's not, they're both female directors, female stars. They both kind of fall in the same, rape revenge for frat boys, revenge for the, misogynistic, clueless, patriarchal assholes. They're very similar in a lot of ways, conceptually, but I don't think Descent tried to be more than what it was, and maybe that's why it didn't succeed. It was a lot grittier, and it took unexpected turns with the revenge. Some may argue much less realistic and more overdramatic than Promising Young Woman, but I thought Promising Young Woman, I really thought it was less realistic. So yeah, let me move on. It's hard to express how overrated I think this film is. So let's move on to another film, Eden Lake. So this was another extreme film I've been reading about for years. Don't remember the star here or stars. It is Michael Fassbender, 2008. Before he became famous, I guess, before he did X-Men First Class and then did a ton of movies like Prometheus and much more mainstream films. became a huge star. He's weak in this. I mean, his character is weak. I don't know if I can say his acting is weak. The whole movie's weak. Eden Lake is. It does have some extreme kind of torture porn kind of parts to it. But again, I think it's too mainstream. It's too predictable. It's watered down. It isn't what I was expecting. It is, you know, from its reputation, I assumed it was extremely out there, you know, like an unearthed films kind of film. But no, not really. Now, I mean, there are parts that you see in a lot of these revenge films over the years. The kind of weak husband, the wife who's kind of forced to be strong because of the weak husband, the relentlessly harassing dudes. I mean, every kind of revenge movie from Straw Dogs down to Funny Games follows this same trajectory. I just didn't think this one went anywhere. And to be honest, I'm not a huge fan of either of those films within the context of those directors. How do you say oeuvre? Oeuvre, it's supposed to singular, but plural, oeuvre. Nor in the revenge category. I think Straw Dogs is a frustrating film, and deliberately so. Same with Funny Games. This film, I didn't really think it was this frustrating, because I think it's mining that same kind of territory, that same conceit, but I don't think it's as skillfully done as either of those films. So, a bomb. Moving on. I reviewed this on my channel briefly last year, The American Guinea Pig Sacrifice, directed by Poison Rouge. Really not much to say about this one. I think the American Guinea Pig thing is kind of played out. This one was okay. It was very predictable. It was kind of like Thanatomorphos, also by Unearthed Films, where you have a character who's kind of degenerating physically, progressively past the point where sanely they would be able to function medically, clinically. And that's a hallmark of a lot of horror movies. You know, people get their arms chopped off, you know, and they tourniquet it, and they just keep going through the end of the movie, you know, and blah, blah, blah. There's no infection, there's no pain, not enough pain to stop them. Horror movies are famous for that. You know, a character enduring insane amounts of physical damage that would just stop most humans cold. So Sacrifice is one of those films, not like Thanatomorphos per se, though it does have that self-destructive vibe, but it's one where characters doing it to themselves. So it's kind of, a lot of these movies to me are very, it's that modern nihilism that I think certain directors like George Bugarite, pioneered. And I'm a huge Bugarite fan, seriously. I might do a whole movie, a whole video on him. I did review briefly Necromantic last year for Halloween with some other movies. But I've been making my way back through his Sex Murder art box set of his first 4 feature films, and I gotta say, wow. I think this stuff has kind of come to its terminal point. There's a locus point where this stuff has arrived, and it's kind of an end to itself. So I think if you groove on this kind of stuff, it's cool. But to me, I just need a little bit more story, a little more artistry, something more nourishing than just, I'm going to mutilate myself, you know, progressively until I cannot walk anymore and function. I don't know. You know, in the 90s, the stuff was pretty edgy. The 2020s, well, this came out in 2017. You know what I mean. In the modern day, I don't want to say it's tired. It's just how it's done. I don't think this was done in an inspired way, and this is not in any way a knock to the producer, Stephen Barrow. I don't care for his American Guinea Pig movies, any of them. I've seen all 3. But I do respect him. I do think Unearthed Films is onto something. They are catering to a particular audience, which I am not exactly a target of, but I do overlap with. Now, there are movies he's put out that that I enjoy, like a Serbian film, The Uncut Version, when he does classic films like Rock and Rule, some of the more extreme stuff like Olaf Edenbach, I like, and I take these movies on a case-by-case basis. And that's kind of how I deal with extreme cinema. And I have so much curiosity that I can't help, exploring. And I'm usually disappointed. And sometimes I'm really fucked up and freaked out by them. I don't want to see Melancholy Der Engel like ever again. Some people love that one. They think it's, the greatest film ever made as an extreme film. I couldn't quite finish it. I got near the end. And I've had some gorehounds seriously make fun of me in public, on public forums, even ones I was a moderator of. Henry can't handle Melancholy Der Engel. That shows you how fucked up it is. And meanwhile, they've jerked off to it like 30 times. I'm exaggerating. I don't mean to stereotype those kind of people, but sometimes they walk into that stereotype themselves. Anyway, I love Stephen Barrow and his assistant, Susie. They're great people. On to another movie that they didn't work on. Consequence of Lust, the French one, supposedly extreme. I reviewed it. Whoa, fireworks are going off behind my house. I'm near South Carolina. They will do fireworks at the drop of a hat. It doesn't matter what the holiday is. It can be anything. St. Patrick's Day. I was going to say Martin Luther King's birthday, but I don't know if South Carolinians would celebrate that. But you never know. But anyway, they're popping them off now. Consequence of Lust I reviewed on this channel. It's kind of a weak French sort of torture-ish movie. Not horrible, but not good. Along the same lines, Madness of Many, also reviewed on this channel. Another kind of little-known extreme film. I'm noticing on Letterboxd it gets 1.5 stars to 1, and yeah, that's kind of what I would do. And I reviewed on this channel and gave it a bad review. Someone's knocking at the door. Chad Farron, an overly, just kind of pathetic attempt to be hip and cool and postmodern. Funny, nudge, nudge, wink, wink violence. Trying to be like Tarantino meets, Greg Araki, and just fails miserably. It's getting bad stars too, but some people like it. The person who said it was stupid and juvenile gave it 3 stars. The person who gave it 5 stars, yeah. I don't know about that. Anyway, it's ridiculous. I reviewed it on this channel, so check it out if you feel the need. Death Proof, now this is one I could talk about a little more, but I won't just because it's a ubiquitous, whatever. Whoa, there goes fireworks. Film because it's a Tarantino film. And it was part of the Grindhouse package that he and Robert Rodriguez did called Grindhouse. Pretty clever, huh? I don't know. Death Proof, yeah, I hated it. It got on my nerves. I give it a bad review here, too. The scene with this young lady who I really like. She's not really that young. She's almost my age. The great Rose McGowan, the brave, fierce Rose McGowan. I like her scene with Kurt Russell. He's kind of somnambulant through the movie. It's kind of like, hey, I'm Kurt Russell. I'm a psycho in this movie, but I'm Kurt Russell. So he's bearable. But, man, some of these actors, Rosario Dawson, who I usually like, Sidney Poitier, Tracy Thorne, Vanessa Ferlito, Eli Roth, they're all just, it's horrible. I reviewed it on this channel. So it's just terrible. I'm not a Tarantino fan, but I gotta say, he really outdid himself with this trash. Wowzers is a movie that was kind of promising. This came out in 2019 by a cat named Ace Thor, like the God of Thunder, and he is trying really hard to do a David Lynch kind of thing, and luckily it was a short film, so it didn't wear me out as far as my patience with it. 40 minutes, but it didn't make it easy to go through either. Another one that got low ratings on here, but I don't really pay attention to these. Next was The Hot Box, directed by a cat named Joe Viola, but executive produced by some big names here in exploitation. Jonathan Demme, back when he did exploitation. He did the Big Birdcage. The other one, not the Big Birdcage. That one I love, by Jack Hill. He did the one right before it, The Big Dollhouse. Both have Pam Grier, Vic Diaz, Sid Haig. Both were shot in the Philippines, produced by Roger Corman. So this is in that same vein. The early an early entry in the women in prison film subgenre that were shot in the Philippines that have that kind of general vibe. you know, lots of violence, lots of sex, a lot of scantily clad women, you know, empowering themselves and killing people, killing their captors, freeing themselves from the jungle and the you know, it's I love these movies, but they're not as Big Birdcage has a self-consciousness about it. I mean, in a good way, because Jack Hill, who wrote and directed it, has stated that it was a parody of these films while the genre was hot. And Big Birdcage is a masterpiece. One day I'll review that if I ever get it on Blu-ray. I sold my DVD. It's one of my favorite films of all time. R.I.P. Sid Haig. Hot Box is a huge step down from those other movies. The Big Dollhouse, Big Birdcage, The Arena, Women in Cages, all those great ones that all have Pam Grier. This one is, who is in this one? Margaret Markov, who was in Black Mama, White Mama, another one from that era in that vein that I like too. Also with Pam Grier. Markov is good. The supporting cast is okay. This one was kind of slack. The pacing was bad. It was really poorly made compared to all the other ones I've cited. It's not as brisk. It's not as fun. It doesn't have as much extreme stuff, nor does it have as much self-aware humor like Jack Hill would have. So I consider it a sad failure. It made me sad because I like that genre. Here's another one that made me sad because I like the early works by this director, though not all the later works. Murder a la Mode, the first feature film by Brian De Palma. This says a lost horror film from Brian De Palma! Exclamation marks. Yeah. I'll read this summary of the plot. Naive young lady Karen wants to help her struggling amateur filmmaker boyfriend Christopher raise enough money so he can divorce his wife. Meanwhile, jolly psycho prankster Otto stalks the building where Christopher is shooting a low-grade adult movie in order to keep himself afloat. Now, anyone who knows De Palma knows these kind of plots, these kind of mildly semi-autographical plots about the film industry, and music industry, and modeling, and sex, and porn, and snuff films, and struggling artists. This kind of makes their way all the way through his early oeuvre. The two movies with Robert De Niro playing the same character, Greetings and Hi Mom. I have never seen Greetings, sorry. Hi Mom I think is great and hilarious. Wedding Party, which is okay, also with De Niro. And he threads the same thing through all the way really to Phantom of the Paradise, has elements of this. If you want to go into the filmmaker, film industry, you know, all the way up to Blowout, which I think might be De Palma's masterpiece. That's my personal favorite, De Palma. Blowout, you know, it's a sharp, like a razor sharp dissection of behind the scenes of the horror film industry. And I don't mean it's realistic per se. Technically it's realistic because his stuff was technically flawless. But same with Phantom of the Paradise in the music industry. Technically flawless, authentic to a point, but also a Fantasia. I love early De Palma. I didn't always. I really did. I thought a lot of his movies were ripoffs of Giallos. Of course, upon research, I see that him and Argento were kind of ripping each other off alternately all through the 70s. Sometimes it's cool and sometimes it's egregious. I mean, they both rip off that great movie, Unsung Giallo. Not great, well made like their films, but Case of the Bloody Iris or What Are the Strange Drops of Blood Doing on the Body of Jennifer. To me, that's an urtext of Giallo films. If I ever get the Blu-ray, I'll review that. It was one of my first Giallos, and I was like, wow, this is Argento and De Palma to the nth power. And I can't even off the top of my head remember the filmmaker. I'm sure someone will correct me on that, though, in a private message. But feel free to let me know in the comments. So here's the deal. Murder a la Mode was just grating. It was amateurish. It wasn't horrible. It's just the performers were not engaging. And that had a lot to do with it. But I like the ideas and a lot of the technical stuff. Like I said, thread their way through slightly later and far better Brian De Palma things. So let's go forward. We've got a few more. Demonia. Lucio Fulci, 1999. You know, there are later Fulci movies that everyone hates, or a lot of people hate, like Cat in the Brain, which I think is incredible. But especially movies that were where his budget was like non-existent, and he was just kind of churning out these these kind of by the numbers horror films, mostly with Brett Halsey as the actor, who starred in his bizarre erotic musical Devil's Honey, which I do have on Blu-ray and I should review. It's weird as shit, but like almost every Fulci movie I see, it has an incredible charm. Of the later ones, I liked Voices from Beyond. Damn, see, I'm gonna remember. I'm gonna forget these later movies because I don't think of them as much. But let me tell you about a couple real quick. Well, like Murder Rock, that's not as late. I like that one too. The disco horror one. I used to have that on DVD. But yeah, like Door into Silence. Voices from Beyond. Where's this? Sweet House of Horrors is okay. House of Clocks. Touch of Death, that's the one. Touch of Death and Voices from Beyond I thought were top notch for what they were. Cat in the Brain I thought was brilliant for what it was because it was obviously Fulci satirizing himself and his reputation as an unapologetic gorehound. It had a lot of, it was like his 8.5, you know, if you want to scale it down. Tin Alley 8.5. Pneumonia, I didn't like the trailer. I mean, the clips I used to see on the video search tapes of them crucifying the nuns, and I enjoy some nunsploitation. Obviously, I reviewed Alucarda on this channel. I'm a huge fan of that. It's not one of my favorite subgenres, but I don't have a problem with it. Of course, the Granddaddy, Godfather, The Devils. I don't remember if I've reviewed The Devils or not here yet. I intended to on Halloween. I forgot. The Devils is really where that kind of strain started. I'm not a fanatic. I don't go. I love Mark of the Devil 2, Killer Nun, all of which I've seen. I don't love those movies. They're okay, though. They're okay. I do love The Devils. I do love Alucarda. Some of them that's not my favorite subgenre. Pneumonia, I think, is one of the weaker examples. I thought with Fulci's hand on it would be great, but it is 1990, near the end of his career, and finally seeing the movie all the way through on Tubi, which has a wealth of horror and extreme films to watch for free streaming. It was, I don't want to say it was a disappointment, but I really thought, yeah, I've grown, I've adapted to Fulci, surely I'll love this, and those bad memories of that video search trailer are meaningless, but I was wrong. It was that bad. It was that bad. I know a lot of people love this movie, so I'm prepared for the hate mail. Indecency was a 2019 film directed by Radu Dragomir, an Eastern Bloc-ish filmmaker, Romanian, I think. And it was kind of one of those movies that was calculated to make you uncomfortable and squirm, kind of like Gaspar Noé. It's basically two women who cheat on this exam, and they're really fucked up. Very conservative professor flunks them, and then they try to confront him, and he's out on a date, and they ruin that. And then somehow he smoothly lures them to his house, and he seems like he's reasonable, and they're kind of being manipulative in the sense they think, oh, they're going to get him to come around, and we can retest tomorrow. And then it gradually descends into kind of the obvious. He's much older than them, and he's kind of a faux liberal, faux artsy guy. He's not as uptight as you thought he was. It's like, oh, he's really cool, actually. And basically, he just wants to fuck them, or, fuck them, manipulate them, get them to whatever, perform sex acts. So it's all degrading. And it wasn't as extreme as I thought it was going to be. It was very tedious. It took a very, very long time to get to where you kind of knew it was going to go. And there wasn't a payoff. So, okay, Indecency, also known as Mo. Vidar the Vampire, I watched this for Halloween, and fairly well made, but pretty stupid. I guess for a lot of people, highlight is the guy recounting his descent into vampirism to a psychiatrist, and he describes how he has a vision that's really more than a vision, a visitation by Jesus. Jesus gets him to perform oral sex on him, and Jesus, climaxes, and then that turns him into a vampire. So, yeah. Okay, well, let's move to the last one. Crime Wave, directed by Sam Raimi, 1985. Absolute garbage. I don't even. It's like set during the 30s or 40s, and it mocks all these conventions and tics and mannerisms and speech patterns of a lot of kind of lowbrow, if you want to put it that way, cheap, cheesy kind of movies from the 30s and 40s. Now, when I was growing up, I thought all movies from the 30s and 40s were like that, and I really hated that overly affected thing where all the characters talk kind of like, "Yeah, wise guy, yeah, come on," and you're like, "What? What state do they live on? Are they all in New York? Are they? I mean, why do they all talk this way?" And then you see a lot of movies, and you're like, there's only a small set of movies that people really act that way, and some of them were very popular, of course, and penetrated the consciousness. But to me, they're the epitome of just cheesy, one-dimensional. Therefore, I don't really think about them anymore. I don't think of them as emblematic of that era or a genre anymore. But apparently, when the Coen brothers did write this movie, they did. And they thought, hey, we're going to make fun of those movies. And it's everything. It's like the cornball of the cornball. And it's like, it's one of those movies where you don't really need a Mystery Science Theater 3000 because the movie itself is beating you to it. It's making fun of itself, and it's aping of these various genres from that period and the way they were done to this extreme self-conscious, ironic fashion that to me is unwatchable. I couldn't finish the movie. I got maybe 2/3 through. I think it's absolute garbage. I think the story behind the movie is sad because Raimi, for whatever reason, he was besotted with the Coens after reading the script for Blood Simple. Now, of course, I love Blood Simple. Not a Coen Brothers fan. I'm really not. I like a few of their movies. I love Blood Simple. And then I strongly dislike quite a few of their movies. And the others I just don't care about. But anyway, Sam's like, I know these guys. And I read this. He's like, no, they're not that talented. Yeah, but then he read the script for Blood Simple, and he's like, wow. So he wanted to work with them, and he hung with them. He wanted Bruce Campbell to be the star of the movie. And Evil Dead had made so much profit off such a small budget that the studio said, hey, yeah, man, do what you want. And then they saw Bruce Campbell. They're like, we're not. And this is a quote from what I read. Bruce Campbell will not star in this film. So Bruce Campbell plays a supporting role. And even though his character and acting is also cheesy and over the top, deliberately, but still annoying, he still steals the movie because he's just a better performer. I guess he's more simpatico with Raimi, and he's better at, hey, I'm going to roll with this. He's a talented guy. The studio was totally wrong about him, and they were totally wrong about this Paul Smith guy. They're like, oh, we want a Hollywood guy, a more known actor. Okay, so who is Paul L. Smith? I had never heard of him before this movie. I do recognize him, but the very little dim memories of him as a supporting actor in other movies, he was cheesy and awful too. Very young guy in this movie, very, very terrible. I can't blame it all on him. I mean, the direction and writing are execrable. Louise Lasser plays the co-star. She's okay, but then I read other stuff about her, about how she was a prima donna, and then she didn't want to she wanted to do her own makeup, and it always made her look like this eccentric bag lady, and they had to shoot anyway. They're running out of money, and you see some of that. She's not as annoying as any of the other actors. All the actors are annoying. She's a little annoying, and Bruce Campbell is the least annoying. The direction itself, now this movie also was rescored. Again, a bad mistake because they deliberately did wow, 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 self-conscious, like this is supposed to be funny. Laugh at this point. They should have just done a laugh track. Just dubbed in a laugh track. I know it's a movie, but even then, I mean, that would have been more honestly satirical. You're supposed to laugh here, dumbass. I really hate this kind of movie. I'm not surprised the Coen brothers did it, and I'm also not surprised that they don't catch any flack for it critically in more contemporary reviews. But Raimi and Campbell always catch flack for it, even to this day. Back in the day, it almost ruined their career. They were already working on Evil Dead 2, and thankfully that saved them from the oblivion that this pile of shit sentenced them to. So I'm happy for them. Now, let me get this straight. I like Bruce Campbell a lot. I like Sam Raimi. I don't like all of his movies, but I am somewhat of a fan. I'm looking forward to the Doctor Strange movie next in May that he directed. But this movie, yeah, and I'm not a Coen Brothers fan, and this movie embodies the things about the Coen Brothers I really hate. The over irony, the kind of cheesy period, this is how characters acted in 40s movies, which that goes through a lot of his films. I mean, obviously, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, which is a film within a film. Oh Brother, Where Art Thou is the fictional film itself that's being made by the character John L. Sullivan in the movie Sullivan's Travels. The Coen Brothers made the actual film. So that's very meta. I think it's a very cool idea. It's very Farmarian. The movie's okay, but again, it's that, and with Fargo, with the extremely over-exaggerated accents, with the exception of Buscemi and one or two others, but to where maybe you went up to Fargo, but did you really meet someone who talked that way? Did you really meet 30 people who talk that way? It takes you out of the film. So these kind of grotesque, stereotypical characterizations, they don't do that in all their movies. I mean, they did not do that in No Country for Old Men or, Blood Simple. There's some grotesque characters in those movies, but not to the point where it takes you out of the verisimilitude of the film. Now, this film, Crime Wave, is supposed to be a comedy, so in that sense, yeah. But, same with Raising Arizona was supposed to be a comedy. And that's the one a lot of people love, too. And to me, it's too grotesque and over the top in those areas, but not as bad. I mean, it's almost tolerable. I like Holly Hunter. But, yeah, Crime Wave sucks. Don't watch it. And that's it. So, okay. So let me see. Have I made it through this one? I have. This is over long for 15 movies. Sorry about that. I'm slowing down as the night doth wane. I may do the top 30 ones that I liked before the night's over. We shall see. If not, definitely New Year's Day. Thanks for watching. Rock on.